Hello and welcome to the Stepping It Up, Implementing Your SRTS Plan webinar. My name is Paula Hyman from the Ohio LTAP Center, and I'll be your technical support for today. Just a couple of housekeeping items. If you have questions throughout the presentation, please put those into the questions box, and our presenters will address your questions at the end of the presentation. The presentation is available to download in the handout section. If for some reason you're unable to download that, just put your email in the questions pod and I'll send that to you directly. All documents will be emailed after the completion of the webinar to the group, and the webinar is being recorded. Providing that the webinar recording is successful, the YouTube link will also be emailed to all participants. Thank you in advance for your participation, and I'll pass things off to Mr. David Ships, Director with Tool Design. David.
Thanks, Paula. So welcome and good afternoon. Kate Harley and I will be co-hosting this webinar today, which focuses on what 4 Ohio entities have been doing to implement Safe Routes to School. As far as introductions, Kate is the Safe Routes to School and Active Transportation Manager for the Ohio Department of Transportation's Office of Transportation and Economic Development. And I'm the Columbus Office Director at Tool Design Group. We are currently a task order consultant with ODOT, providing active transportation and safe routes to school training, education, and planning support to local communities around Ohio. So before we begin, just some general housekeeping notes to kind of piggyback on what Paula had said. So please keep your microphone on mute. Enter any questions that you have in the questions box and enter them at any time. We'll have a Q&A at the end of the panel presentations and again at the end to address any other questions. So here's the agenda for what we'll be covering today. We'll start with an overview of ODOT's Active Transportation Academy, then move right into our panelists and their presentations. We'll then have a little moderated discussion, followed by a Safe Routes to School overview, and then we'll wrap up with any additional questions. We are scheduled for 90 minutes. So first off, I want to start with a quick overview of ODOT's Active Transportation Academy, the program through which this webinar is being provided. So the purpose of the ATA is to offer free trainings, workshops, and e-learning opportunities to help communities around Ohio reach their active transportation goals. The ATA is open to any local jurisdiction in Ohio, such as schools, government entities at the local and regional levels, and any of their partners. So professional development credits are available for participants of trainings, workshops, and e-learnings. If you're in the planning profession, you're always welcome to self-report your involvement in this webinar for continuing education credits. So for more information and to sign up to host a training or a workshop in your community, check out the ATA webpage. So the ATA offers instructor-led trainings, community workshops, e-learning, and archive material related to active transportation planning and implementation. So here's a listing of the instructor-led trainings you can apply to host or attend with a partnering entity. Many of these are train the trainer style, such as conducting walk and bike audits, crossing guard training, girls in gear, and walking school bus. We also offer customized community workshops to meet you where you and your partners are on a variety of active transportation related efforts, such as creating an active transportation plan, creating a school travel plan, creating a Vision Zero action plan, and conducting walk audits. So the courses listed here are available on ODOT's website as asynchronous e-learning opportunities. Each course is between 1 and 3 hours long, split up into 45 to 60-minute parts. You can sign up for these for free and take them at your leisure. So active transportation basics and safe routes to school basics are prereqs for hosting a training or workshop in your community. There's also material on retired courses available in the archive material section of the webpage. If you want to apply to host a training or workshop, fill out the form on ODOT's website and an ODOT rep will be in touch. So now I'm going to hand the microphone over to Kate Harley to provide a little bit of background.
Thanks, David. Just wanted to jump in to say hello. We are very, very appreciative to have such a great panel of presenters on board for this Safe Routes to School webinar, and we're excited to help showcase some of their work. ODOT allocates about $5 million annually to the Safe Routes to School program. But the work itself is almost entirely facilitated by local governments, schools, and partner organizations who are really doing this work at the local level. So the folks on the screen that you'll be hearing from today, they represent on-the-ground frontline practitioners who are advancing safe routes to school in their areas. They're the ones who are interacting with community members, coordinating priorities with stakeholders, and are ultimately the ones advancing projects in their community, whether physically through roadway construction or by way of programs and education. All of the examples that you're going to hear about today represent projects that have actually received some funding through ODOT's Safe Routes to School program. And so this simultaneously serves as examples of eligible as well as competitive projects in the eyes of ODOT's Safe Routes to School program specifically. So just a big thank you to our panel, and I'll let David provide details on who exactly we'll be hearing from today.
Thanks, Kate. So join me in welcoming our panelists. We'll start with Sarah Tilley and Kiara Williams, who are health education specialists at the Lorain County Public Health Department. They will be followed by Jenny Hansen, who is the Toledo Safe Routes to School coordinator at the YMCA and Live Well of Greater Toledo. Tim Niddle, who is with the City of Columbus Department of Public Service and handles grant applications and transportation policies. And finally, Nick Cunningham, who is the city engineer in Cambridge. So we'll be covering two topics today. We'll start with the presentations on non-infrastructure applications of Safe Routes to School by Kiara, Sarah, and Jenny. Then we'll move on to the second topic, infrastructure applications of Safe Routes to School. Tim and Nick will discuss specific Safe Routes to School projects in their communities. So welcome, Kiara and Sarah, you're first.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kiara Williams, and I am a health education specialist here at Lorain County Public Health in Lorain County, Ohio. And within that role, I serve as the Safe Routes to School coordinator. And then I'm joined today with my colleague, Sarah Tilley. She is a program manager here at Lorain County Public Health and serves to coordinate our Safe Routes to School grant. So today we're here to discuss Girls in Gear. So what is Girls in Gear? Girls in Gear is a free bicycle program that is for young girls ages 9 through 15. The goal is to engage adolescent girls in lower income neighborhoods between these ages to inspire these ladies by breaking down barriers. That way more girls will choose historically male-dominated fields of study. This program provides motivation for physical exercise through bike riding, which will encourage, nutrition education, which will encourage girls to begin a pattern of healthy decision-making that will continue throughout their lives. You can go ahead to the next slide. Oh, I'm sorry, nope. Why is public health involved? You can go back. Let me talk on that. Public health is involved because data shows that 30.4% of all adolescent girls between the ages of 6 to 19 are considered overweight or obese, with 41.8% being African American and 41.2% being Hispanic girls. We also in our department bring the trainings to the groups. We have facilitated before, and we help create connections within the community. We also leverage in approximately $2,000 of our Safe Routes to School funds to support this program. So if you choose this program, a workbook and lesson guide will be provided to you. Within the workbook, there's 10 sessions that are approximately 2 hours in length, and specific topics are covered. Along with the 10 sessions, there is a graduation that is incorporated into the last session. And for graduation, we invited community leaders, key players and sponsors, and families to be involved. Girls are awarded bicycles. They get certificates, locks, helmets, bike lights, bells, and they also receive t-shirts, water bottles, and drawstring bags. So we have tested 2 types of program delivery for this format. We have done after school, which is every Monday for 10 weeks in the fall. And we've also done a summer camp style, which is 3 consecutive days in June. We can go ahead to the next. Thank you. So we have done a total of 5 Girls in Gear programs so far. 4 programs being in our urban cities of Elyria and Lorain, and 1 being in North Ridgeville, which is more of our suburban area, which is a fast-growing suburb. So within the urban locations, we use a Metro Park location for the girls to ride in. They were able to use the parking lot to practice, ride on the trails, and also we completed a walk audit of the neighborhood surrounding the park. And then the girls were able to ride on the road to practice what they have learned throughout the course. In our suburban area, which is the fast-growing suburb of North Ridgeville, we used a local high school as this model, and mostly the girls rode on the multi-purpose trail. We used that one as a summer camp model, and then the urban settings were the after-school 10-week programs. So we had a variety of instructors. Within North Ridgeville, we used a school wellness coordinator to assist us with this. And then also Lorain County Metro Parks summer interns play a part in road riding with the girls as well. But one thing to note in North Ridgeville is that we did have a school wellness coordinator facilitate the program. And they also leveraged other funding through our United Way grant to cover safe routes to school, to cover Girls in Gear, because they do not receive safe routes to school funding. So there is multiple ways that you can do this program. All the instructors were trained by ODOT or trained by an already qualified trainer. ODOT will travel to you to do a training, but will require at least 12 to 15 participants. So one of our trainers came from Black Girls Do Bike, which is an organization here in Cuyahoga County, the county next to us. She is a part of the League of American Bicyclist Instructors. So she was able to assist the girls through 2 of our programs so far by leading bike rides, educating girls on trail etiquette, and just teaching basic bicycle mechanics. For example, like changing a tire, fixing a chain if it had popped off, or adjusting saddles. And she also plans to continue to help with our upcoming summer camp in 2023. So girls that complete all the sessions, like I did state, they do receive a bicycle. However, currently you're not permitted to use funds to purchase bicycles. So we have been creative, and we receive bicycles through donations from work sites, key players, local bike shops, or sometimes girls just like to bring their own. But however you choose to secure your bikes, I do suggest you plan ahead of time. When you put out an application, also require girls to share with you if they have a bike or if they don't. Because if they do need a bike, an inseam, which is a measurement that is needed in order to fit the girls properly and comfortably and safely on their bikes. Local bike shops will be able to assist to measure girls. So some lessons learned, fueling is important, of course. So every session provide a healthy snack for the girls and bring lots of water. Girls tend to forget their water bottles or whatever the case may be. So it's very important to have those nutrition pieces. And when you get the lesson guide, they outline it so well for you. It's great. They have a list of materials that you will need. I do suggest you get all of those materials. Basic office supplies are needed throughout the course. Secure bikes as soon as possible, as said, and helmet sizes is what else we learned, with different hairstyles, different head shapes. All helmets aren't universal, so there's different sizes in helmets, just to make sure that you want to properly fit those for the girls as well ahead of time. Plan for the weather, because we know here in Ohio it can rain and it can snow, whatever. So we plan to always road ride, get outside as much as we can on the sunny days, and plan to have a location that is indoors for you to be in on the rainy days as well. And summer camp has worked better than after school, and the more riding, the better. The girls seem to have more fun in the summer than coming from a long day of school to then another lesson of teaching them something else to learn. Some successes, definitely 10 girls in each session have been enough. A partner for each, so there was always a partner and a buddy. The swag, it doesn't get old. So t-shirts are way cooler than reflective vests. They were not interested in that. So we ordered some fluorescent t-shirts. The girls got to keep those, and they were also very excited to keep the bikes. And you can also tell through some social and emotional results that new friendships are built, trust, confidence is built, and also most girls like to come back and help with future programs. And on to the next. And yep, so that's all I have for you today. So thank you so much, and move on.
Thank you. Well, we'll move on to our next presentation. Jenny.
Hi, everyone. This is Jenny Hansen. I'm with the YMCA of Greater Toledo, and I work within our Live Well Greater Toledo, which is a coalition of the YMCA here in Toledo. And our coalition focuses on increasing physical activity of those in our community through active transportation and also access to healthy foods. So our Safe Routes to School falls under that increased physical activity portion. I work with two school districts in the city of Toledo. We're very unique in having two separate public school districts. One of them has 40 K through 8 schools, and then the other one I work with has 6 K through 6 into 7th through 8th grade buildings. So in all, I work with 49 schools within the two districts. I'm going to talk to you about some of our encouragement programs that have been very successful here in Toledo. We put a lot of emphasis on National Walk and Bike to School Day every year. We celebrate those every October and May. And in general, we'll typically have about 75% of the schools register for those events. We work with the schools on providing a toolkit on helping them plan their event. We provide them any print materials, flyers, things like that in promotion. And then we also provide incentives for them to provide the students on those days as they arrive to school. We, in the past, have done travel tallies on Walk and Bike to School Day regularly. And when we do that, we show that about 40% of the students district-wide are walking or biking to school on those event days. Next up, we do our Walk and Roll Wednesdays, where schools will encourage students to walk or bike to school on Wednesdays. And we have several schools in each district that promotes this. And then we have our walking school bus programs. Some of them include a remote drop-off or pickup. Some of them are through community partnerships and organizations such as Boys and Girls Club and our Metro Parks. So you can go to the next slide now. So I'm going to kind of focus on each of these individual encouragement programs. As I said before, usually about 70% of the schools we work with will register for Walk and Bike to School Day. And many of the other schools actually promote and do the event, but sometimes I just can't get them online to register for it, but they'll end up sending me pictures and stuff anyways. And then we provide walking and biking maps, which we have had created for each of the districts that focuses on our priority corridors that the schools can utilize. To educate students on which are their safest routes to take to and from school into us. And that, like the toolkit that we provide them assists them a great deal on how I'm planning that, but then often they'll reach out to me, for some help and ideas on that. We encourage them to use parking at remote locations during these event days. We help them identify a safe remote location. And they just reach out to, if it's a business owner or faith-based or a park, and just get permission on that given day to utilize that remote location for parents to park and walk to school with their kids. I already mentioned about the toolkit, marketing materials and incentives, and the travel tallies that are completed the day of each of the events. Next slide. The next program that we encourage is our Walk and Roll Wednesdays. So once again, we've created a toolkit for our schools to utilize in planning their Walk and Roll Wednesday programs. We create the initial flyer each school year for them to share with their families to let them know about this new program. We provide incentives. We use the Fitness Finder tokens. So the schools are provided these incentives, and on each Wednesday, the student earns a new Fitness Finder token for walking or biking to school. And then we provide some other incentives like water bottles and pedometers that they'll usually use as like a raffle prize. So kids, when they participate, get to put their name into a raffle, and then they'll draw a couple names out every few weeks or once a month for some additional prizes. Well, we provide some posters for them to hang around the school as a reminder. They have a large banner that they can hang on their welcoming table or inside their main doors, and then any other print materials. We always print the very first flyer of the school year for them, and then beyond that, we just provide them the document so that they can print them as they need them. Next slide. This shows just some data that we've collected for one of our Walk and Roll Wednesday programs. This is one of our elementary schools, and this data was collected in 2015 and 2017. So you can see that after implementing that Walk and Roll Wednesday, that we increased the walking and biking of students by about 4% and 6. Sorry, I got to do my math in my head really quick. About 9% in the afternoon. We always have more kids that walk home in the afternoon. So that's just a little data that we have collected for that. And then this is another school where we implemented a Walk and Roll Wednesday program. And that also shows the increase on the number of students that walked or bike. And you can see it pretty much correlates with the family vehicles. So the walking and biking went up and the family vehicles went down. Next slide. Pre-COVID, we had 15 of our Toledo public schools, that's one of our districts here, that were implementing Walk and Roll Wednesdays. And since students have returned back into school, we are slowly growing our program back up. This year, we will have about 7 of the Toledo Public School District that are implementing a Walk and Roll Wednesday program again. And then our Washington Local School District, which has the 7 elementary schools and 9 junior high schools, they actually have a district-wide program now that district-wide they have Walk and Roll Wednesday, and it actually goes all the way through their high school. They include their high school in it. The high school students don't get any Fitness Finder tokens for that. They're not really into that, but they do just encourage students on Wednesday, if they can, to walk or bike to school. We identified a remote drop-off location for those high school students that they can utilize. And then next up, we have walking school bus programs, and they all look a little different. We really try to meet the needs of the school. So the first one we have is at our Hawkins STEM Academy, and that walking school bus is Monday through Friday to and from school. And we partner with our metro parks here. This school is very close to a metro park, the Toledo Botanical Gardens, and there is actually a walking path that connects the school property to the Toledo Botanical Gardens. So we utilize their parking lot as a remote drop-off and pickup program. We started this program last year, and we had about 14 students registered, and anywhere from 8 to 10 that regularly participated on a daily basis. And this year we have doubled our enrollment. We're actually at 29 students. I've been walking with them a couple days, the last couple weeks, and they've got 20 to 23 students a day that actively participate in that walking bus school program in both the mornings and afternoons to and from school. At that particular school, I have 2 paid walking school bus leaders that receive an hourly wage, and we utilize funding through the Ohio Department of Transportation or Safe Routes funding to support them. And one of them is a parent at the school, and the other one is a grandparent. And then we have our Grove Patterson Academy, which has a walking school bus currently only on Wednesdays. And we utilize a church that is almost a half mile from the school where the parents will park. And then we have parent volunteers that walk the students to and from. This school is unique in that the parents are required to volunteer a certain number of hours in the school year. Grove Patterson Academy is kind of you have to apply to and, be accepted into the school and things like that. So those are all parent volunteers that walk with the kids. And then we have another walking school bus program at Kaiser Elementary, which runs after school 3 to 4 days a week. And the students are walked to a local Boys and Girls Club, which is 1 mile from the school. And here we also have paid walking school bus leaders, and we have several at this location as they rotate turns. Most of them are school staff. There are a couple faith-based volunteers that have been involved with the school for quite a few years, but there are staff that assist with this, and they are actually employees of the YMCA. And they are compensated per trip, and then any employee of the YMCA automatically receives a free YMCA membership. So that little perk through being a YMCA employee is really huge, and when we're recruiting the volunteers, so they don't really care so much about the $5 per trip they get, which we are able to use our funding for. They're more excited about receiving that free YMCA membership. So it's a nice little resource that we're able to provide them. And that, like I said, that one is after school 3 to 4 days, and they typically have 65 students last year enrolled in that program and walked anywhere from 30 to 50 students a day to the Boys and Girls Club. And then this just shows some of our data from our Washington local school district since we started Safe Routes with them in 2019. As you can see, that was pre-COVID, and we really did our school travel plan study that year. So we just got started, and then COVID hit, and we had a very challenging time, working with them. But they were great during COVID, letting us do a lot of virtual stuff. And you can see that we've been very successful in changing parents' opinions about students walking or biking to school. In 2019, as far as very fun and fun, there were about almost 80% of the parents thought that walking and biking was fun, and then that increased significantly in 2022, and then the same about is their healthy walking and biking, how they feel about that. Their opinions changed greatly on their opinions and how healthy walking and biking to school is for their students. Next slide. Is it done? Yeah, but it probably is my very last slide. So hopefully if you have any questions at the end, I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny. Before I hand things over to Tim, I wanted to remind you all, if you have any questions related to our 2 non-infrastructure presentations here, please put them into the questions box. Tim?
All right, thank you, David. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
All right, so as folks have said, my name is Tim Middle. I work for the City of Columbus's Department of Public Service. I am my technical classification is a management analyst too, up in the director's office, but one of my primary job duty is to coordinate all of our applications that we submit for local, regional, and federal funding, including Safe Routes to School. And so, excuse me, the project that you see here was actually the first Safe Routes to School application that I worked on for the city. And I'm just going to walk you through the process that we have, because I'm sure that you're like us, and you get through the school travel plan process. You're like, this is fantastic. We finally have a plan, but then you actually have to start implementing it. And how do you determine, what are you trying to do in-house versus, what can you use just the Safe Routes to School funding for? What would you need more funding for? And kind of like, where do you begin? And so I'll just kind of walk you through this presentation that I actually gave to ODOT as part of our application. And it just kind of goes through the City of Columbus's thought process and what we were trying to do with our application. So Eakin Elementary School is on the southwest side of the City of Columbus. It's near the Hilltop area. It's also right near a portion of the county. Briggs Road, actually, you can see that on the right-hand map. That's actually a boundary line. If you want to go ahead. Oh, and then there are no sidewalks on Kingsford. So all of the kind of purple lines that you see have no sidewalks in the neighborhood. So one way that the City of Columbus tried to organize a school travel plan is focusing on where are the highest need schools, and then of those schools, excuse me, where are the ones where improving the ability for students to safely bike and walk to school, where would that really get the most returns? And so one of the very highest things was, prioritizing schools where a large percentage of students are already walking or biking to school, as well as those that have a high concentration of students living within the immediate area. And so for Eakin Elementary School, these are some of the socioeconomic indicators. 87% non-white, 99% economically disadvantaged, according to the Ohio Department of Education. 67% have limited English proficiency. There are a lot of new Americans that live just south of Eakin Elementary School. There's some apartment complexes down there that where there's a very large Somali population, among others. 53% of the students walk to school, which is, I believe this is one of our highest, if not the highest percentages of students walking to school on our school travel plan. 76% of the students actually live within half mile. And then Wedgwood, the broader neighborhood, has been a citywide priority in general as well. So it was already on our radar, so to speak, in terms of communities that we are looking to invest more in terms of infrastructure and other funding. And then also the community itself is involved. That's another thing that as we're selecting projects, we're trying to look at is, where's the involvement already, and how can we help, come aside them in these efforts. And so Wedgwood already had a task force focused around safety. There were already walking school buses there, and you have the YMCA Community Corps. So just from a need perspective, it was high need, but it was also a school that was doing everything that it can, and the community doing so many things already. So go to the next slide. When it came to the school travel plan itself, when we go through and kind of start to get ready to select a project, typically I'll try and gather in our design and construction people, because they have a good sense of how long is this going to take, because this is Safe Routes to School funding is federal. And so you have to go through the NEPA process. You have to work with ODOT and your local district every step of the way. So I always involve our design and construction division from the very beginning, just to make sure that we're coming up with reasonable schedules, reasonable estimates, but also with our division of infrastructure management, since they work so closely with identifying just general sidewalk and shared use path needs within our community. But then also we have public health involved, and I think on this we also have the Department of Development involved too, just to try and give us a broad perspective. And so what stood out about this project at Eakin is Kingsford Road is a priority corridor on our school travel plan. It has a very significant, as we're about to see, high concentration of student residences, and it also scored high, but it actually should have scored even higher as things change and as we learn more about the area. Even using our prioritization method for the school travel plan, we realized that we actually didn't score it as high as we should have. And so this project really kind of went way up on our list. Go to the next slide. And so this shows you on the left, you have the school travel plan, and on the right, this shows you the density of student housing for Eakin. So everything kind of over to the left, you can see the entire area is extremely dense, but within that dense area, Kingsford is the only road that still didn't have a sidewalk on it. And so by simply going up and down Kingsford, we would be able to, we felt, really make an impact for all the students in the area. Go to the next slide. And we also looked at crashes that were in the area too. The map on the right shows crash history. I think I went back almost 10 years on this, but you can actually see there were about anywhere between 4 to 5 projects directly on the corridor. Briggs Road, so the bulk of the project is on Kingsford, but there's a little gap on Briggs. You know, the sidewalk didn't go all the way to the curb, and so this project actually filled that gap there, because there was, on one of the OH1 crash reports, the police actually noted that the people who were struck were walking there because there was no sidewalk to walk on. And so that's another resource that you all have. Definitely use ODOT's TIMS to pull crash information, and even look at the OH1s, because there can be some really good narrative in there that just helps give you a better sense of not only where the crashes are happening, but why. You know, and that's not going to be the case in every single one, but when you can find a crash report that directly, you know, links the crash to a lack of facilities, that just helps you present an even more compelling application. You go to the next one. Okay, and so some of the other factors that we were looking at is there was already existing sidewalk for the most part on both Eakin to the north, and that's the east-west sidewalk that would take the students to the school, as well as on Briggs. And so Briggs, for some of the students, would act as a collector, again, an east-west, and then you could route the students up Kingsford. So by just finishing off Kingsford Road, we could complete the network overall for students going to Eakin Elementary School. Other factors that we took a look at too is that, and we're still working on getting this gap filled between Sullivan and Eakin. There's just a little gap there that we need to fill internally. But the city coordinated when Franklin County redecked the bridge over the railroad tracks on Wilson. We actually put a shared use path that goes all the way down to Sullivan Avenue. And so we've gone from having a very incomplete network to just about complete. We still need to finish off that gap, but you know, this one little project plays a much broader piece than just our overall network in general. So that's another thing that we try and look for as well, is, you know, how does these Safe Routes to School travel plan and the project we're looking at, how does that fit into the broader network connectivity of the area and the broader needs that students have after hours? Because they're not always just walking to school, they're walking to other points of interest and other things like that. And so we were looking at bus stop connections, we're looking at 301 complaints that we received from the public, just looking at where the worn paths were, as well as we've been in the process of upgrading all of the school zone flashing beacons in the area, and Eakin, that was another thing that we actually wound up including in the project, was just to upgrade that. So here is, when we were looking at it too, we also were looking from an engineering perspective. So what appealed to us here is the streets were already curbed, and we also had a very broad right of way. So I think there's some utility relocations, but we didn't actually have to require any new right of way. We didn't have to do retaining walls. We didn't have to, those trees actually were all able to stay in because we were able to thread the sidewalk between the curb and those trees. So from a ease of construction, it was you know, very straightforward. Go to the next slide, please. And so, you know, planning out the project, we worked on our Division of Infrastructure Management. We passed it off to Design and Construction, and they oversaw both the design as well as the actual construction of it as well. This is just another shot. This is, I believe, Eakin Road. Get the next one. And this is the little gap. And so, like I said, these are federal dollars. So you just want to make sure that whatever schedule you propose, that you're able to hit it, and that you propose it knowing that you're going to have to meet all of your NEPA requirements. And so there we said we're going to finish it in fiscal year 2022. And if you could go ahead and go to the next slide. You can see we're now in fiscal year 23, but here on the left-hand side, you can see where that gap, where that's been filled. And then this is just the sidewalk there, and you can see the trees were able to be saved. For the most part, it looks like we might have had to remove one. But that was Eakin. So we look for network impact. We look at high use, but then we also really look at constructability. Because again, you have a limited amount of money for safe routes, and if you go over the $400,000, now $500,000, you need to be able to come up with the funding locally or with partners, and that's another reason why we look for high impact projects, because if you have overruns, it makes it easier to persuade the masters of the purse to actually give a little bit more money.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tim. Those of you that you're paying attention to, you heard a little tease in there, but Kate will give you a little bit more about that in just a few minutes. We're going to hand things over to Nick.
Good afternoon. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, go right ahead.
All right, thanks for having me. I'm going to be presenting on the capital improvement project, our Safe Route to School, North 10th Street, that was completed in the city of Cambridge. My name is Nick Cunningham. I am the city engineer. Next slide, please. So Tim already went in pretty great detail regarding the Safe Routes to School travel plan. The city of Cambridge does have a travel plan, and we work through the projects that are in our travel plan. The travel plan was put together by Omega, which is a corporation here in our area. It was approved by the schools and our city council. Here's just a map from our safe travel plan, and it shows several projects and priorities. You can see we got, I think, A through X on here. Unfortunately, it looks like the project that we're going to be discussing today didn't get highlighted. I highlighted on my end, but it apparently didn't come through. But you can see the primary school at the top, and then as you kind of go southwest, there's a school or a road, I'm sorry, that goes north and west right up to that. That is the project. That's the corridor that we completed the North 10th Street project on. One of the things we focused on in the city of Cambridge is connectivity. So we've been trying to request, and we've been pretty successful at getting funding to put sidewalks throughout our city to give a safe route to school for the traveling public. What you see in these photos down here is actually our Steubenville Avenue project. It's completed now, but at the time of these photos were taken, you can see they were working on the road there. But what I'm trying to point out here is the sidewalks, about right where you can see that curb and gutter start. That was a project that was completed after the Safe Routes to School project. And that was part of our Steubenville Avenue project that used TAP funds, Transportation Alternative Program funds, to fund that sidewalk. So right now, at the conclusion of this North 10th Street project, essentially all the kids can get from our downtown Cambridge all the way up to the school. If you go to the next slide, you can see we connected on the north end as well. So you can kind of see the sidewalks over here that are a little dirty on the right side of the photo, but they're still ADA compliant. They were completed recently. So we connected the North 10th Street project to these sidewalks that, again, if you continue north, you can go to the elementary school that was in that first photo. So we've just been focused on connecting our sidewalks to give a safe route to school for the kids. And the next slide, you can see we have made sure that our sidewalks are all ADA compliant. One of the things that are required are the detectable warnings. Typically, you just install these at intersections. The city of Cambridge has taken the approach that we'd like to install detectable warnings at all public right-of-way. So here's an alley, so we actually put some detectable warnings in the alleys as well. On the next side, you can see that we have service walks as well. So on this particular residential street, we allow on-street parking. So we have sidewalks that connect to the road. We do not put deductible warnings on here, as these are not intended to cross the street, but instead just to allow someone who parks on the road to get to their residency. Here would be a pretty typical intersection for a Safe Routes to School project. You can see that there's pavement markings that indicate where an individual should cross the street. We have a stop bar there indicating where a car should stop to allow people to cross the street. We also have the detectable warnings to warn the traveling public that there is an intersection approaching, that they need to be cognizant of that. But this is pretty much a standard intersection with detectable warnings and pavement markings, both to warn the traveling public and all, pedestrians, and also the traveling public as far as motor vehicles. Funding for this particular project, we did utilize Safe Routes to School funds. What we used, those funds were for the construction and construction inspection. The city, we funded the survey and we did the engineering in-house for this particular project. And then I believe that concludes the slides that I prepared for this presentation.
Fantastic, Nick. Appreciate it. I'm going to tell you to maybe hang on here because I'll ask you the first question. Well, one, I want to make sure that folks, please put any questions that you have into the questions box right now. But Nick, maybe you could talk a little bit. You mentioned TAP funding, or Transportation Alternatives Program. How did you make the decision between, TAP funding or Safe Routes to School funds? And how does the city sort of coordinate and make some of those determinations?
So the TAP funding projects that we've applied for to date have all been associated with a larger project. So if we were able to get funds through like small city funds, those would fund the street, curb and gutter, some storm sewer, but they don't necessarily fund your sidewalks. So what we do is we try to couple those funding programs in order to maximize the funds that we can put towards a project. So we've used TAP funds to date as part of a larger project. And then we try to utilize the Safe Routes to School or local funding to kind of connect the dots between those larger projects.
It's a great way to specify it there, Tim. Appreciate it.
Yes,
or I'm sorry, Nick. I
No
said
worries.
Tim. Maybe I could ask a question here. Kiara, I know that Lorraine, I think, hosted a Girls in Gear event in the last year. How did you go about sort of partnering with some others to get enough of those attendees to have a free training, as you sort of had mentioned?
Hi, yes, sorry, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, yes, sorry, can you re-ask the question just one more time for me?
Yeah, I think so. I was pretty sure that you guys had a Girls in Gear training in the last year, and I think you had mentioned, or perhaps I had heard before, that some of those folks were able to get a free training, or all of them were. How did you partner with others to make it free for everybody? Like how did that all work?
Yes. So as far as the training that was organized within the last year, we reached out to our community partners that have assisted some of our programs as far as like volunteering. And in order to more make it a sustainable program, we wanted to train some of those volunteers so then they could also run the programs on their own without our support if needed, to facilitate the program so we could do more of the back end work, if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, that's good. I'm curious too, what type of feedback did you get actually from the young ladies that you provided this, encouragement to?
Yeah, I actually was able to facilitate one of the programs. So I got to lead the girls, and all of them, they all came in very shy and quiet. They all came from different school districts, so that was kind of neat to bring all of the girls together. And then at the end, we did a survey, and they all provided feedback on the survey, like 1 to 10 scale questions of if they enjoyed it or not. And then we had a few if they wanted to volunteer for the next Girls in Gear program to make note of that, and then we would communicate with their parents. And majority of the 10 girls, so I would say 7 of the 10, checked the box to want to help with bike rides in the future. And a lot of the girls didn't have bikes when they first began, maybe 1 or 2. So when they realized they were presented with bikes as a gift, it just built a sense of trust and it just empowerment right then and there for them to then like encourage them to not only ride here, but continue to ride outside of here. So sometimes we see them riding around the community on their bikes still. So it's pretty nice.
That's great. Jenny, I was curious, so we have a question that came in here about whether parents needed kind of assurances that their kids were actually safe, any additional assurances, in doing these walking school bus or walking programs.
Yeah, so the Kaiser program that we utilize, that walks a mile to the Boys and Girls Club, last year they utilized the Active for Me program, which I know you're kind of familiar with that, but that's web-based, and that allows the students are registered in the program, and they receive their own specific ID like code, and then when and it gets printed on like a little card, and when we would arrive to the Boys and Girls Club, that would get scanned and the parents would get a text that they arrived. So they're getting ready to start their program back up this school year. We've been waiting on the Boys and Girls Club to get their staff in place before we bombard them with all these kids. It failed a lot because you have to be on Wi-Fi, so sometimes it worked and sometimes it wouldn't. So I'm not sure if they're planning on using it again this year or not. Otherwise, they have a text app that they use to communicate with all the parents. So the parents are really good about letting them know if they weren't going to be walking that day. They register at the beginning of the school year and fill out a form and circle the days their student's going to participate. So maybe they're only participating Monday and Wednesday. They walk Monday through Thursday. So there's 4 days that they walk them down there. And, if a student doesn't show up at the meeting spot after school, then the walking school bus leader that oversees it in the school can text that parent and say, hey, I just want to make sure so-and-so is not walking with us today. So she kind of communicates that way. Overall, she didn't have they had one issue. One student went that wasn't supposed to go. He was very quickly found by his parent. They figured it out that he walked with them and he wasn't supposed to. So.
That's great. Thank you, Jenny.
Mm-hmm.
Tim, question in here sort of about from application to when the project was actually, was actually constructed, how long did that take? And were there sort of other efforts that you guys had going on, as that process was being developed?
I know that's a really good question. So like I said before, our infrastructure management team helped prepare the application. They did the initial estimate and schedule, and then design and construction reviewed it. And then once we received official notification from ODOT that we had been awarded the funds, we went ahead and there's a project handoff meeting from internally from infrastructure to design and construction. I think it pretty much flowed the way that we initially thought it would in terms of we construction, as you can see, was wrapped up this year. One of the initial hiccups was I think there's a little bit more utility work than what we had expected. I think we had to work a little bit more with our public utilities department. Columbus, you may or may not know, has some pretty stringent stormwater requirements that most other cities don't have to meet. And so even though we are a city agency, public service, we still have to follow public utilities guidelines there. And I think that created some additional complications that you weren't exactly foreseeing. But one of the reasons why we worked with design and construction on our schedule is that there are always, especially going through a federal project, there are always going to be hiccups, either having to satisfy our own other departments like public utilities or ODOT. So it flowed pretty smoothly. I'm just trying to pull the schedule for the project right now, but we also track all of our capital improvement projects internally on what we call a journey board. And so we are there are multiple opportunities just to check in and see where what the status of design was. But I mean, the other thing too, like when we looked at these, we really do try and look at the budget and either pick a project that we know can come in right around that budget, and even if it goes over, we can still find the extra funds, or have a project that we know is city council will be willing to help pay. Whenever we have federal funding in a project, it's leveraged and it's generally a funding priority. And then just take a look at the schedule real quick. Like I said, I don't recall any big delays. Things flowed smoothly once we got the word from ODOT that we got the award.
That's great. Appreciate it, Tim. Question for Nick here. How did the city handle the work behind the walk, matching walks to front doors, steps, or driveways? Were easements or work agreements obtained? And was there any ODOT determination on allowing the setting of forms at the back of the walk? So questions like that.
This particular project was pretty straightforward. All of the work was completed in the right-of-way. There was sidewalk there prior to replacing it, but it was in terrible conditions. There were sections that were missing. Most of it was broken up. So this was more of just a remove and replace the existing. So it was fairly simple to match up, as we were not trying to change elevations.
Gotcha. Well, Sarah, we have you on this panel here, but you haven't gotten a chance to say anything yet. So maybe I'll just ask you the bigger picture question here of what advice you might give to future Safe Routes to School applicants.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think here in Lorraine County, we've been doing Safe Routes as a local health department for quite a while now. I think we're going on like a decade of Safe Routes to School. And something, we have a pretty diverse panel here, and something that I think we've always found our success when it comes to Safe Routes in is whether you are getting started in a community or you're trying to re-engage efforts in kind of this post-COVID school landscape, we really always go back to finding that one person that can be your partner on this. Being a single agency trying to go forge ahead in Safe Routes is extremely difficult. So whether it's in the schools, it's that school wellness coordinator, or it's at the city level and it's an engineer or a planner, finding just like that one person to help be your backup as you try to forge ahead with some of these initiatives is extremely helpful. And every district is different. I think Kate and I presented a few months back, and this was also one of our key takeaways, but we often get asked when we bring new people on or when we're training, like, who's the go-to person? And there's never a go-to person. It's not like, oh, always go to the principal, but it's really differs by community and where they're at. So find that one partner to help you keep going forward, and things like Girls in Gear and walking school buses and all of the great stuff we've talked about really can flourish.
Great, thanks, Sarah. There's a question in here. I'm not sure. Maybe one of you wants to speak up and answer it, but kind of more about how we involve our community activists to kind of develop that engagement, whether it be for an infrastructure project or whether it be something that is non-infrastructure related. Anybody want to speak up on that?
I don't mind continuing on. It's something we've been thinking about a lot here in Lorain County.
Go for it.
Sure. So we have had mixed success, I think, finding those community activists and connecting them to this work. And in the past, we have found that gathering people around, you know, in a single event or a single objective has been more successful than trying to get them to come to these regular meetings where we're getting into the nitty-gritty of like infrastructure and listening to presentations from the engineer. So that has been something that we've really found successful, especially when it comes to bringing community activists to do something like a temporary demonstration project or some sort of like guerrilla streetscaping, if you will. But in the future, Kira and I are going to be updating one of our safe routes to school active transportation plans. And we're kind of thinking through how we can stipend community members to either host sort of the, if you want to call them quote unquote public events or public meetings that a lot of these traditional plans kind of engage and require. It's TBD if it's going to work that way, but we're trying to get out of the box of maybe having a posted public meeting with someone who looks like me talking about something that is not interesting to everyone, to like finding those community members who might be interested in safe routes or might be interested in equity or might be interested in the environment, and paying them for their time to do more community listening and community talking in less formal settings. So we're going to see if that works in re-engaging people into our planning process, and we can maybe report back at the end of 2023 to see if it did go well. But that's some of what we're doing up here in Northeast Ohio.
That's great, Sarah. Appreciate you sharing. Well, how about Tim, I come back to you, and maybe you could give us your quick elevator sort of speech about what advice you might give future Safe Routes to School infrastructure applicants.
Make sure you discuss the project internally. You don't have to have it designed out, but before you get too far down the path, you make sure that there are no unforeseen engineering challenges, and then just figure out, work with your partners to see where you can get the most impact with one project.
Great. Nick, I'm going to pass it to you. Anything you would add on top of that?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yeah, just any advice that you would just give to future infrastructure Safe Routes to School applicants.
I guess the advice that I would give, at least for District 5, which is where ODOT District 5, which is where Cambridge is located, is communication with ODOT. Get them on board with your project, let them understand the project, because you will be submitting to them. So I think that's a good starting point.
Yeah, that's a great point here with anything related to Safe Routes to School, not just infrastructure, but your district reps are a great source of information and can help guide you along there. Well, Jenny, how about I come back to you and sort of ask the same question? Any advice that you would give from the non-infrastructure standpoint for future applicants?
Yeah, I think here in Toledo, we've been really very, very fortunate. We have also been at Safe Routes to School now for a decade, maybe more, a decade. And we have retained so many of our original team members from our first school travel plan, which really consists of Team ACOG and the City of Toledo, our transportation specialists through the city, the health department, our school district. We always have school district representatives at our monthly meetings. We've, had some parents involved as well, but those key people that really have the same vision as we do in increasing active transportation, not only through non-infrastructure, but infrastructure. And, they've stayed involved, and, they're really good at when they're getting ready to work on a project to reach out to me and contact me and say, hey, we don't want to leave safe routes out of this. Where do we have any projects, that we can, include in this? And we're always, changing some of our members up and getting new ones. We ask all the time at every meeting, does anybody have anyone they'd like to invite? And that, so we've really been fortunate. And I think the reason is because we do meet often. We meet almost, in the beginning it was once a month. Now it's about 9 times a year. Usually take December off for the holidays because a lot of people aren't available. And then usually we'll skip a month or 2 in the summer. We do some summer programming, but a lot of our team members, they're on vacation, and we have a lot of people involved with the school district. So we found, we don't have a bigger attendance. But I think meeting often and just constantly revisiting what we're doing and improving what we're doing is very helpful.
Great. Thank you, Jenny. Well, Kiara, I'll come to you here last. Maybe what advice, again, would you give future applicants, and take that any direction you'd like?
Through some of our Safe Routes work here at Lorain County Public Health, since we are the health department, we focus on a variety of our school districts, and just being mindful that every district is different, so their goals may look different, and to take those into consideration when you are implementing non-infrastructure work, because not everyone can maybe possibly ride bikes in this neighborhood safely quite yet. But so everyone's funding is different here. So that's just kind of my advice from a standpoint of working with a variety of school districts trying to come together.
Fantastic. Well, if folks do have further questions, please put them in here. We should have some more time at the end here, but I'm going to move things forward and hand things off to Kate Harley.
Great. Just as we're kind of wrapping things up today, I did want to provide a brief reminder about some basic information to know about the Safe Routes to School program. So I'm going to cover a little bit of that now, but I'll go more into depth on a totally separate webinar, which I'll share at the end of my slides as well. So for those who aren't familiar, ODOT does have an annual Safe Routes to School funding program. We provide funding for 3 different types of projects. Infrastructure projects, which have to be within 2 miles of a K through 12 school. That's new this year. We're expanding that eligibility to be K through 12, not just K through 8. This funding is available for construction in 26. And funding is available for all phases of project development. The second type of project is a non-infrastructure project. So funding is available for activities that improve safety or that encourage walking and biking to school through things like education, encouragement, enforcement, evaluation. This funding is available immediately, so in fiscal year 24, in time for the next school year. And then lastly, the program also provides some funding for assisting with school travel plan development, whether we provide consultant assistance to help a community or whether we reimburse a community for developing a school travel plan if they need to hire somebody to help them. Something that's new this year, we will open up school travel planning requests in October. So there will be sort of this earlier opportunity for communities who are looking for school travel planning assistance to apply before the end of this calendar year. Those applications will be due in December, and this will allow planning to take place a little bit sooner. So we'll be able to kick off the development of those school travel plans closer to about April next year. We will continue to allow school travel plan assistance requests to come through our annual application with our infrastructure and non-infrastructure projects, which are due March 3rd. It's the first Friday of every March in 2023. And then finally, just a few things that are new to the ODOT Safe Routes to School program. As I mentioned, we have officially expanded the program to serve students K through 12. Most notably, this impacts the ability for infrastructure projects to be located within 2 miles of schools that are, potentially just serving kids that are 9 through 12, whereas that wasn't eligible previously. It might also impact the type of non-infrastructure work you're doing because the age of students that you're working with could be older. We've also done just some small changes to funding caps. We've increased our infrastructure funding cap to $500,000. We are including more flexibility for school districts of all sizes to apply for up to $60,000 for non-infrastructure projects. And we're also allowing locals to apply for 2 years worth of non-infrastructure projects. So 2 years is just double the money, capped at $120,000. And newly eligible, we will allow purchasing of bicycles as part of training related activities. So you won't be able to purchase bicycles as giveaways or as prizes, but it will be possible to apply for projects that include bicycles when they're utilized routinely as part of a training program. And then just look out for an updated 2023 Safe Routes to School application guidance document. We expect to publish this by early October. This is really the most comprehensive overview of the program, what's eligible, what's not, what's in the application, how are we going to score these projects, what requirements do you need to submit as part of your application. So this document will have all the information that you need. It'll be online in early October, and it'll also be the basis of the upcoming webinar that we have scheduled. So for more information, please register for our October 19th Safe Routes to School application overview webinar. I will be providing an overview of the program, how to apply for funding. We'll do an in-depth overview of the application process, eligibility, scoring, and I'll be sure to highlight all of the different changes to the Safe Routes to School program starting this cycle. And then just a final reminder about ODOT funding opportunities in general. There's a variety of programs that can provide bicycle and pedestrian related funding. The best resource to look to for this information is our program resource guide. This is really our ODOT's comprehensive resource for understanding all of the different funding programs that are available to local communities, whether that's through our highway safety program, if you're a community that's within a metropolitan planning area, funding flows through your MPO, Safe Routes to School, of course, and for areas outside of MPO areas, our ODOT Transportation Alternatives Program, just to name a few. Any final questions, David?
Yeah, we got a couple in here, Kate. One specifically for you here. So do the bicycles stay with the training program, or do the students get to keep keep them after the training ends?
So if you are looking to include bicycles within a budget that you're submitting to ODOT, then it would be a requirement that those bicycles stay within the program. If that's not a model that works for you, it might make sense to take the tact that Lorraine County did and consider looking for donations or leveraging bicycles in other ways so that you could give them out to students if that was your goal. So there are some limitations that come with the bicycles.
Great. I think that was the only question directed at you, Kate, here, but I'm just checking. Yeah, we have a little bit of time here left. So if folks do have other questions and they want to put it into the question box, please do so. I guess I will go back. Well, I want to say thanks to all of our presenters and panelists first and foremost. Really appreciate them taking the time and walking through their projects and programs that they're working on. So there was a general question here, and I think it piggybacks on top of the question that Sarah sort of answered about working with community organizations. Let's see if I can find it here. A question about how best to collaborate with local cycling groups to assist with, schools or developing those partnerships specifically with schools or other community organizations. I don't know if anybody wants to speak up and answer that.
Dave, this is Jenny.
Go right ahead.
Hi, I can answer that. So we collaborate with another nonprofit, Toledo Bikes, here in Toledo, and then also with some of the other cycling groups through our Bike Fix It and Safety program, which we have been doing since the very beginning of Safe Routes to School, so for almost a decade. And what we do is we host 8 bicycle fix-it programs every fall and then again every spring at the schools. We kind of rotate through the schools, and we have volunteer mechanics that are from the Toledo Bikes and then some of the bike organizations locally that will come out and volunteer their time to fix students' bicycles. And then we provide some safety education and free helmets to the students. So we've been doing that, like I said, for a decade now, and it's very successful. We usually average about 25 to 30 students per event, but we can have sometimes 50 kids show up, sometimes more than that. So it just really depends. You never know. But they're all usually, pretty successful. And so that's just been a great partnership and how we involve them in our Safe Routes programming.
That's great, Jenny. I have another question here for you.
Mm-hmm.
Someone had posted earlier and I actually overlooked it, but question about sort of background checks. Did you have to do background checks for those that were leading your walks?
Yes.
Or
Yes,
other
we do.
program items? Okay.
Yep, we do background checks on all of them and references through, it's just part of our employee onboarding. For the parents, the one school where the parents are required to volunteer. So they're strictly volunteers, and they're required. They have their background checks done through the school district. So that's it's run a little different. It's kind of run like a club at the school, and so, but yes, background checks are done on all of them.
Great, thank you. Well, I mean, we have a few minutes left here. Does anybody that's part of the panel, or Kate, I'll include you in this, does anybody have any other sort of advice or, things that you feel like the folks that are on this webinar should know about?
I'll just reiterate what Nick said. It's a really good idea if you're thinking about applying to the program to set up a conversation with your district Safe Routes to School coordinator, to provide you with feedback, kind of help you get going in the right direction, or review anything ahead of submitting an application, to try to give you feedback to make it as competitive as possible. So definitely a good place, some good people to be thinking about talking with sooner rather than later.
Kate, there's another question that just came in as you were talking that is probably something that you can answer here, but can non-infrastructure funds be used by the local agency to help with the salary of a position that leads Safe Routes to School work, including, walking school bus or et cetera?
Yes, it is possible. So our non-infrastructure funding is really quite flexible. It can be used to engage the services of consultants, or I was even going to say, for those of you looking for like bike trainers, if you wanted to, pay a bike shop or some sort of group for their time and services, even that is an option with non-infrastructure funds. Funding can also be used to employ a Safe Routes to School program coordinator, or to pay for like critical volunteers that are like specifically advancing the work. The only thing that is not eligible is what we call like subplanting of funds. So we wouldn't want, and we wouldn't be able to provide funding to a position to do work that is already within their scope of work that they're doing already. That's like supplanting of funds, but we are absolutely able to provide, the costs associated with employing someone who's going to provide dedicated time to advancing Safe Routes activities, per the application. So the short answer is yes.
Great, thanks, Kate. I'll extend to the panel here if there was any other items that they felt like they wanted to share with the attendees of the webinar.
Hey Dave, this is Jenny again. I would say, I don't know everybody that's on here and how new they are to Safe Routes, but having been at this for 10 years, the one thing I have learned is there's no perfect model, and flexibility is very important. And I think our walking school bus programs are a really good example of that. They're very successful, but they're all very different. And that's one thing I learned. Like, I'd create this program model and I wanted things to look a certain way. And then I realized it can't always work that way for everyone. It doesn't necessarily meet that school's need. So you have to sometimes change it up, to get your programs to be successful and meet their needs. So I think that's just something to really keep in mind, especially with people who are new at this, to know that you need to be flexible, and not every program, even if it has the same name, is going to look exactly the same at each school.
Great advice. Any of our other panelists want to weigh in? Well, if we don't have anything further here, I again want to say thank you to everybody that was a part of this. And we will end the webinar a few minutes early here, and wish you guys all a great afternoon, and look forward to your applications or your inquiries related to Safe Routes to School projects in the future here. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, David and Kate, and all of the speakers for presenting today. We really appreciate it. And thanks, everyone, for your participation.